Hi, Dan here from Sirocco Appliance Repairs. If you've got one of these older Simpson Easy Set dryers and you find that it suddenly stops going, then it can sometimes be quite an easy fix. Basically what happens is the element for the dryer is around the front here on these Simpson Easy Sets, and a good way to tell them apart is basically the back looks like this with this panel here. So this is the series we're talking about. They're older dryers but they're good dryers. But there's an element here, that little panel I showed you has got a little fan belt that blows the air through, or sucks the air through and blows out the back. If that blows, or the belt breaks, then the element will overheat and the safety reset here will trip out. And then depending on which model you've got, most of the dryer will stop entirely. Some of them the dryer will still turn, but just won't blow any air and won't heat. So if you find it's not going and you press this button in and you hear a click and then the dryer starts going, it means that the fan's belt's broken. So if it clicks on and it starts going, don't just carry on using it again, because it's not blowing air, it's not going to dry, the element's just going to overheat and it's just going to click off again. So, and technically it could be a bit of a fire risk if it was all dry and the element gets hot, but the cut-off should cut off before any risk happens. But it's actually quite an easy thing to repair. Check that we're in the right camera zone here. There are two screws into this panel. Both of them are Phillips head screws, unless they've been replaced at some point. Oh, this one's actually missing one screw. And then the panel clips into a little slot there. And basically what we have is we have the motor pulley here, which has got another belt that goes around the whole drum, and then the fan is in behind this here. And this belt runs between the two. Now exactly what you can see happens here is that the belt has kind of got a bit stiff. It's been sitting unused for a long period of time. Usually over summertime people don't use their dryer, and it gets kind of a bit of a bent shape. It also gets a little bit brittle just due to age, and then when you run it, it's got that bend it wants to be at, and it ends up snapping the belt. The new belts are relatively cheap. You can see this one is slightly clearer because it's not being degraded, and basically all you do is pop a new belt on. Now some of them are really tight. I think years ago, depending on what model you've got, some of them are tighter than others because there were two lengths of belt. Now they're only one length. So if you look here, the belt only goes to about here. If you think that you've got the wrong belt, you haven't. It's just got to be a really tight fit to be able to drive. So I usually put it on the small pulley first, put it onto the start of the big pulley, and then just use the belt to pull it around like that. I'll zoom in and show you that. So we put it around the small pulley. You can see how short it looks, but rather than trying to stretch it, if you just put your thumb on there, and then I'm just kind of leading it around and using the belt to pull directly on. If it's too tight, what I have had some people tell me they've done is coil the belt up, put it into a mug, poured some boiling water over it, let it sit there for a minute, and then it gets a lot softer, and then they put it on. I'm not sure how that affects the tightness of it overall. I haven't had anyone have any negative reports, but if you find it's a lot tighter, you could just run some hot water over it, let it soften a bit, and that'll give you a bit more stretch. And then to put this back on again, you can give it a bit cleaner if you want. We're just going to put that on there, and then our two screws. Now the first screw actually screws into the motor mount to help secure it. The second screw here is just screwing into the back panel. So the inner screw there is the more important of the two. And so now when it runs, the fan is going to blow air as well, and it won't trip out. Depending on how old your dryer is, it may need a clean out. Something to be aware of is that, of course, as your fluff builds up in your dryer over time, it can be a bit of a fire risk. So in that case, it's a bit more involved. Just take the back panel off here. There's a bearing you got to release from the inside of the dryer. Take the back panel off. There's a little bit more involved in that. We'll show you that another time in another video. But if the dryer stops, check that belt. They're relatively cheap, depending where you're getting them from. They'll be $15, $20, $25, something like that. And you'll be back up and running again.